Hey everyone, I am Chirag, and today I'll be doing a presentation on the wage debate. How do we reduce poverty among low-income workers? This is a photo of me in case you haven't seen it already. It was 1938 and the nation was in the midst of the worst economic crisis in its history, although signs of recovery were on the horizon. President Franklin Roosevelt had signed into law the Fair Labor Standards Act, banning the practice of child labor for good and establishing the right to a minimum wage. Amended numerous times over the years, the FLSA has been the preeminent wage law in the United States. The wage itself has been updated with more contemporary legislation, the latest being the Fair Minimum Wage Act of 2007. This raised the wage to $7.25 per hour, where it has stayed since 2009. Currently, though, the minimum wage debate has again been placed at the forefront of political discussion, with a failed amendment to raise the wage to $15 an hour having been attempted to pass as part of the $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill in March. This debate raises new perspectives and arguments regarding the minimum wage, and here such proposals will be discussed as part of the solution to the question. How effective would a higher minimum wage in the United States be at helping families and communities with a lower socioeconomic status compared to alternative routes to raise living conditions? My answer to this question is that a higher minimum wage in the $11 to $14 range would be beneficial to those of lower socioeconomic status. However, this must be supplemented with additional policies that benefit those who make lower salaries while not overly harming employers and small businesses. These policies should include an expansion of the child tax credit for families, as well as a tax decrease for lower income earners. This would help to support families while also promoting economic growth through the tax decrease. To look at our problem, let's first broadly discuss the effects of a minimum wage. According to traditional economic theory, a minimum wage would lead to a decrease in employment. To understand this, we need to look at a supply and demand graph, specifically in the labor market. In such a graph, demand is graphed with the downward sloping line and supply is graphed with the upward sloping one. In the labor market, what the government is essentially doing is setting a price floor, and in some cases, putting this price floor above where the two lines meet, or the equilibrium. In economics, this would lead to a surplus since the supply of workers is much greater than the demand. The effect is the previously mentioned decrease in unemployment. The other widely discussed effect is price level. Assuming an employer had to pay someone a higher minimum wage, some think that overall prices at such a business would be increased to account for this. This would hypothetically make the consumer bear the burden of the price increase. Studies performed by economists have shown that effects on unemployment are very minimal provided the increase to the wage is not exorbitant. This is some data that shows how price level is impacted by increases or decreases to the minimum wage. However, any policy that can be drafted has a high chance of not affecting a given targeted industry as positively as others. For example, let's look at the specific labor market for restaurant workers. This is complicated by the fact that a significant part of most waiters' wages comes from tips. These tips are normally covered by tipped minimum wage laws. Increasing wages may carry adverse effects for restaurant owners, but they may not be very significant according to studies performed by labor economist William Even. He does, however, suggest that under a wage increase, employers might force employees to pool wages, which would decrease overall earnings for these workers. Even suggests that an increase to the tipped wage might slightly affect employment levels in full service sit down restaurants, but probably won't affect much in limited service restaurants, such as most fast food businesses. Wage increases are often the focus of how to improve conditions for those of a lower socioeconomic status, but part of the reason the debate has gone on for so long has been because of the potential downsides for worker employment and small businesses. Here, let's take a look at some other economic policies that might help low-income workers and families, starting with two federal assistance programs, SNAP and EITC. SNAP, short for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, sends financial support for food budgets to families in need. The EITC, which stands for the Earned Income Tax Credit, provides tax assistance to low-income families, with the size of the tax credit depending on the number of children in the family. Together, these two programs would be a great help for those who would earn minimum wage while not directly affecting employment all that much. To achieve financial equity for these workers, these two programs should be expanded. Additionally, another policy change that could help would be a decrease in taxes. This is more of a controversial action since taxes are used to pay for essential services such as infrastructure and social programs. However, a tax decrease could stimulate spending by boosting aggregate demand in the economy while allowing lower income workers to keep more wages in their pocket. Overall, a tax decrease, as well as the expansions of the EITC and the SNAP, should be a part of any solution to the wage debate. Inflation is yet another important aspect to discuss when looking at this debate. For increases to the minimum wage, many economists agree that a new level should be indexed to national inflation levels in order to stop a decrease in real income for workers. Take an example. If I make $7.25 an hour, and if a Big Mac retails for around $4, I can buy 14 Big Macs with a day's earnings, based off of a 9 to 5 job. However, if inflation stays at about 2% per year, in 10 years a Big Mac would cost almost $5 and I would be able to buy around 12 of them. While a simple example, this demonstrates the concept of inflation, or the gradual devaluation of money. Tying a wage with inflation, or setting the wage to grow at a rate equal to that of inflation, would fix this issue. However, one weakness of this is that it does not account for costs of living around the United States. Nevertheless, factoring inflation into a minimum wage would have positive effects for lower income workers. Since the Great Depression, the minimum wage has been a highly contentious subject in the world of macroeconomics and economic theory, often as part of a wider debate over worker rights and protections. Lower income families and workers need policies that benefit them the most, and while a pay increase seems very beneficial on the surface, this can indirectly affect workers negatively due to losses in employment or other factors. Proper solutions must take into account the effects of the wage on both businesses and workers, and a targeted solution focused on stimulating spending is the right call for this situation. Consisting of a raise to the minimum wage to around $12.50, indexing this to inflation, expansions to federal assistance programs, and tax decreases on lower middle and lower income families, the issue of poverty in the United States can potentially be severely mitigated, having a very positive effect on lower income workers. Of course, it's not perfect, but if any such solution existed, it would probably already have been implemented. In modern times like these, problems are sometimes too complex to solve fully, but they can be reduced and dealt with. For the millions of lower income workers in the US, anything helps. And from local communities to the federal government, we can help.